Dear learner, I am Dr. Sufyan Ahmad, working as Deputy Librarian in Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today I am going to discuss a very important topic, preservation and conservation of library material with a special reference to print material. We all know that library houses various types of documents by considering the long-term preservation of the items while still allowing the users to access them easily. Due to consistent use and aging, all library collections experience damage and decay. So, there is a need of preservation and conservation of these materials. Library materials suffer damage or deterioration because of several factors, some inherent in the materials and other beyond the control of the library. Library holdings may begin to deteriorate because of the organic materials from which they are made. Each type of material, paper, glue, plastic, etc., that goes into the manufacture of a book or other print materials have their own combination of physical and chemical properties and a lifespan. The other factors include all the conditions surrounding the processing, storage and use of the materials. Preservation and conservation are commonly used interchangeably. Preservation means regular maintenance of library materials, whereas conservation means the remedial treatment and restoration of the already damaged material. Preservation is the task of minimizing or reducing the physical and chemical deterioration of documents, whereas conservation is the maintenance of documents in a usable condition through treatment and repair of individual items to slow the process of decay or to restore them to a usable state. Conservation include study, diagnosis, preventive care, examination, treatment, documentation using any methods that may prove effective in keeping that property in as close to its original condition as possible and for as long as possible. The conservation actions are carried out for a variety of reasons, including aesthetic choices, stabilization, needs for structural integrity or for cultural requirements for intangible continuity. According to Encyclopedia of Communication and Information, preservation involves maintaining an object or information in a format that the continued use and accessibility of information ensures provided. It includes developing criteria for selecting materials that have cultural or historical importance and accessing their preservation needs, halting the deterioration of material by providing a stable environment and proper supplies and equipment for storage, developing and providing the resources necessary to engage in an ongoing preservation program, committed to the continued existence of valued materials by providing a stable environment and proper implementing policies for the safe use of materials, and providing the resources the necessary to engage in an ongoing preservation program committed to the continued existence of valued materials. Preservation also includes preparing for potential disasters such as floods, fires, tornadoes and earthquakes. Conservation is the stabilize and restore an object in its original form through various treatment methods. Professional conservators are trained to apply conservation treatment methods and move recommendations for long-term preservation of materials in suitable environment. Preservation and conservation decisions are dependent on a variety of factors, the most important of which is to value of the information or intellectual content an object provides. Other factors that are considered include the uniqueness of an object, its connections with significant events, individuals or places, its significance in relation to an institution and the mission of that institution, whether information provided by the object is available elsewhere, and the consequences of the loss of the item or the information it contains. The current condition of an object, including its fragility and level of deterioration or wear that occurred during its use, serves as an important factor in preservation and conservation. Various materials and formats have special preservation needs. These are a few recommendations that are common to the long-term preservation of nearly every type of item. These recommendations deal with high temperatures, high humidity or large fluctuations or changes in temperature and humidity can damage most materials. High humidity encourages the growth of mold and mildew and affects the chemical makeup of items such as film, photographic prints and audio tape or videotape. High temperature often speeds up the deterioration of materials. The need for preservation and conservation. Now I am going to discuss the deterioration of library material form the basic problem of libraries and given rise to preservation and conservation needs. Manuscripts, photographs, historical archival and other materials are of immense value from the cultural and historical point of view and therefore they need to be preserved. Manuscript, photographs, historical, archival and other rare materials are of immense value from the cultural and historical point of view and therefore they need to be preserved. In the course of preserving materials, there is need to adequately consider the value of records in terms of its educational, socio-political and economic impact on society and decide the period during which each class of documents might be kept for use or permanently preserved for future use. However, no library material is infinite and by their very nature they are susceptible to deterioration and hence their preservation and conservation becomes essential. In order to retain information contained in all media of communication for effective use by future generation, there is a need to preserve and conserve them. Now I am going to discuss strategies in preservation and conservation. The strategies in preservation and conservation of library materials can be viewed in form of number 1, document selection. If preservation and conservation practices will be followed, then the goal should be to bring as many worthy collections as possible for the document at risk to improve access. Then next point is options. Choosing the options that will follow to meet the requirement of the custodian functions, the library as well as its current use. Number 3 point is budget. Preparing a budget for the preservation and conservation of the reading materials, including cost in procuring equipments and others. Number 4 is procuring necessary infrastructure. According to the option chosen for preservation, necessary infrastructure should be developed. In case of digital preservation, necessary hardware and software should be procured. If possible, the archive or library can go for automated management system also. Number 5, the conservation laboratory, which is also very important. Conservators routinely use chemical and scientific analysis for the examination and treatment of the works. The modern conservation lab uses equipment such as microscope, spectrometers and X-ray machines to understand better the objects and their components. The data thus collected help in deciding the conservation treatment to be provided to the object. Now I am going to discuss types of preservation and conservation techniques. So the preservation and conservation techniques can be of two types. Number 1, preventive conservation. Many cultural and artistic works are sensitive to environmental conditions such as temperature, humidity, and exposure to light and ultraviolet rays, etc. Taking sufficient measures to protect materials in a controlled environment where such variables are maintained within a range of damage limiting levels is called preventive conservation. Number 2, interventive conservation, which refers to any act by a conservator that involves a direct interaction between the conservator and the cultural or artistic material. This interventive treatment could involve cleaning, stabilizing, repair, or even replacement of parts or consolidation of the original object. Now, what are the factors to be considered for the preservation and conservation of print materials? So, in case of print material preservation, some important remedial actions can be taken, which are number 1, environmental remedies. So, poor qualities of building where books are stored and extreme climate conditions create damage and decay of the library materials. The key environmental factors include temperature, relative humidity, pollutants, and light exposure. Books stored in a cool, dry, dark areas generally have a much longer lifespan than those housed in hot, humid, brightly lighted areas. Constant or stabilized levels of temperature and humidity are less harmful than the fluctuating level. Maintenance of suitable environment condition is the base on which all other preservation and conservation activities rest. Each material has its own unique temperature and humidity factor. Thermometers, hygrometers, humidity indicator strips, hygrothermometer for monitoring temperature and relative humidity are generally used to monitor the environmental factor. Light meter and ultraviolet meter can be used to measure the exposure of light to the documents. The use of climate controlled storage facility is the best way to maintain a suitable environment. Now, let us discuss these factors in more details. First of all, I will discuss temperature. Lower temperature is considered good for library collection. However, since books and other materials are often housed in areas with staff, and a compromise must be struck to accommodate human comfort. A reasonable temperature to accomplish both goals is 65 to 68 degree Fahrenheit. However, if possible, films and photographs collection should be kept in a separate areas at 55 degree Fahrenheit. Now, this humidity. Books and other materials take up and give off moisturizer, making themselves sensitive to relative humidity. Very high humidity encourages mold and insect growth. Low humidity cause materials to lose their flexibility. Fluctuations in relative humidity are more damaging than a constant humidity in the middle or low range. Generally, the relative humidity should be between 30 to 50 degree with a little variation as possible. However, recommendations on the specific levels to maintain vary depending on the type of materials. Next point is pollutants. Particulate and gaseous pollutants such as ozone, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, etc. can cause dust swelling and causing irreversible molecular damage to materials. Pollutants are exceedingly small and not easily detectable or removable. The introduction of the heating, ventilating and air conditioning filtration system in the building will be helpful to defense against the pollutants. Next point is light. So, exposure to light also has a significant effect on library materials. It is not only the light visible to humans that can cause damage, but also ultraviolet light and infrared radiation. Light is measured in lux and the generally accepted level of illumination with sensitive material is limited to 50 lux per day. Materials receiving more lux than recommended can be placed in dark storage periodically to prolong the original appearance of the object. Using ultraviolet filter on windows and lights will also help. Number 2 factor is controlling biological agents. As you know, pests such as insects and vermin eat and destroy paper, and the adhesive that secures book bindings. Food and drink in libraries, archives and museums can increase the attraction of pests. They are most common in cool, damp, dark and undisturbed areas of libraries, archives and museums. In general, if materials are stored in a clean and dry environment and looked at and dusted regularly, the risk of damage by insect is generally reduced and problems will be detected before a lot of damage is done. An integrated pest management system is one way to control pests in libraries. Third point is preservation reformatting. So, many reading materials which were published before 1950 were printed on very poor quality paper. Print materials in developing countries are often created using fragile, non-lasting paper product and ink. Preservation reformatting is the way through which complete conservation of materials into another format is done to preserve them. Number 4, which is very important point, is disaster management. So, the unpredictable disasters like fire, floods, storm or even broken pipes within the library building may lead to very extensive damage of the collection. These are generally beyond the control of the librarian, but if it is possible to develop emergency plan for handling the collection and in some cases for preventing the disaster, it can be minimized. If a major catastrophe strikes the library, which actions will be taken first and who will take them? The responsibility must be assigned well before the event actually happens. Now, I am going to discuss Disaster Management Act 2005, Chapter 5, Section 37, which mandated every ministry or department of the Government of India to develop their disaster management plan in accordance with national plan. Hence, we must formulate certain action plans for mitigation and better preparedness against each of the disasters to which the library may be prone to. Now, I am going to conclude this discussion. Except a few libraries, all others have paper based reading materials in the form of manuscripts, books, periodicals, paintings, drawings, charts, maps, etc. The basic materials and constituents of the physical entity of these library materials are mostly organic in nature, which are susceptible to natural decay and deterioration. In books, apart from paper, the other materials which are used are board, cloth, leather, thread, ink, adhesive, etc. All these materials used are nutritious to some living organism. So, the library materials need protection from factors of deterioration. Preservation of deterioration measures significantly extends the useful life of all types of documents and must need to be implemented. In doing so, the person concerned should work with curators, recommending officers and other preservation staff to make decisions about binding, housing and related matters. Remedies against environmental damage of reading materials include shielding from sunlight, air conditioning and such others in all work of material such as in store or display or in transit. The storage areas should be clean and cluttered. Dust, dirt, etc. should not be allowed to accumulate within the storage areas. When the books are in the shelf, safe storage or use of proper storage cabinet by way of keeping the valuable reading materials in box and keeping documents in between metal supports provide protection against mechanical damage. It also helps the document in being free from dust, dirt and direct exposure of light. Insects, mold, rodents are dangerous for a document. Generally, pests are attached by clutter and the food remnants. So, eating, drinking, etc. should be prohibited in a place where collections are kept. During cleanliness or necessary measures should be taken so that cleanliness itself does not damage the fragile materials. In the library, disaster recovery plan should be put in place. Repairing of documents including use of adhesive, repairing tears, etc. Tears in leaf can be carefully aligned and repaired with the strips of Japanese paper and a starch paste or other suitable adhesive that bears the quality of good conservative. This process should be followed by binding. Generally, library binding is considered good for many kinds of documents. The special collection should be treated especially. Because of the big volume of library material having chances of deteriorating widely, diverse material and methods for preserving them involves considerable cost also. Therefore, it will be better if the libraries are turning to cooperative arrangements for preservation. There is an old saying that preservation is always better than cure. Same holds true for science of preservation also. The preventive measures, which include all form of action taken to prolong the life of library collection, should be followed. This includes keeping the environment clean and dust free, protection from the sunlight, keeping the temperature and humidity under control, and proper handling and security of the collection, and of course, a better disaster management plan, so that in the event of any such situations, prompt action should be taken. This is all for today's discussion. I hope you all have found this lecture very useful. We will meet again with a new topic. Till then, take care and goodbye. Thank you.